When I tell people how we met, they always ask the same question. How did you even talk to each other? And I always say the same thing. We didn't. Not really. The summer I met Luca was the summer I decided to stop waiting. I had just finished a brutal semester of grad school. My breakup was still fresh in that low-key, background noise kind of way, and I needed to feel something that didn't involve textbooks or dating apps. So I booked a one-way ticket to Portugal. I had no itinerary, just a backpack, a journal, and some vague idea of finding myself. Mostly I wandered Lisbon, Porto, little towns with orange rooftops and old women hanging laundry from balconies. I took photos of tiled walls and ate too many pastries. And then I ended up in Lagos, beach town. Touristy, sure, but beautiful. I was staying at this no-frills hostel near the cliffs. Bunk beds, creaky fans, communal kitchen with one working burner. But it had charm. And every night, people gathered on the rooftop to drink cheap beer and watch the sun dip into the Atlantic. That's where I first saw him. He was leaning against the wall, barefoot, holding a can of Sagres, his tan legs pulled up to his chest. Wavy black hair that looked like it had never known a comb, gold necklace resting on collarbones that probably got sun every day. He was laughing at something someone said, head thrown back, completely at ease. He was way too handsome. One of those people you glance at and then look away from quickly because you know your brain will short circuit if you stare too long. I watched him for about 10 minutes before I realized I was being obvious. I turned to go back inside, and just as I reached the stairs, I heard a voice behind me. "You from America?" I turned. He was looking at me, curious, amused. His accent was thick, Italian maybe, but his English was clear. "Yeah," I said. "New York," he nodded. "I go there someday." He didn't say anything else, just sipped his beer and went back to looking at the sky. I stood there like an idiot before finally asking, "You traveling too?" He paused, thinking. Then slowly, "I work in France. Now, vacation, alone." His words were simple, but his smile said more. I nodded and awkwardly leaned on the railing next to him. "I'm Chris," I offered. He squinted, then tried to repeat it. "Crees? Close enough." "You?" I asked. "Luca." We didn't say much else. Just stood there in quiet until the sun disappeared completely. And people started trickling back inside. I went to bed thinking about him. Not in a romantic way, okay? Not only in a romantic way, but more like curiosity. The kind of curiosity that makes your chest feel light. The next morning, I found him in the kitchen trying to make coffee with a broken French press and no clue how the stove worked. I helped him, and we sat on the porch drinking bitter coffee in chipped mugs. Every word between us felt like a small puzzle. He'd say something in English, frown, then switch to Italian. I'd catch maybe 2 words, guess what he meant, and answer slowly, hoping context would do the rest. It shouldn't have worked, but it did. That afternoon, we went to the beach. It wasn't planned. I just asked, "Beach?" And he said, "Yes." And 20 minutes later, we were walking down the cliffside trail, passing a bottle of water between us. At the water's edge, he pulled his shirt off without hesitation, revealing a lean, sun-warmed body that should have been illegal. I tried not to stare and failed miserably. He noticed, smirked, said something in Italian that sounded like teasing, and when I gave him a look, he just shrugged. "Too hot," he said, pointing to the sun. "Sure," I muttered, trying to will my blood to stop rushing to my face. We swam, floated, let the waves pull us around. At one point, he reached out and brushed water from my face, his fingers lingering just a second too long. Neither of us said anything. Back at the hostel that evening, I was sitting on the floor of my bunk, scrolling through photos I'd taken. He appeared in the doorway, hair still wet from the shower, towel slung low around his hips. "You come?" he asked. I blinked. "Come where?" He gestured up, toward the roof. "Sunset." Right, that had become our thing apparently. I followed him. We didn't talk much that night. Just sat close, closer than usual, passing a shared bag of chips, our knees touching occasionally. It felt good, stupid good, and I wasn't ready for it to end. So when the sky finally turned dark and the others drifted off, I stayed. So did he. I don't remember who moved first. Maybe it was both of us. A shift in position, a glance too long, a brush of hands. And then, with a hesitation so slight I almost missed it, he leaned in and kissed me. His lips were soft. That's the first thing I noticed. Not tentative, not rushed, just this quiet confidence that surprised me. Like he wasn't wondering if I'd kiss him back. Like he already knew I would. And he was right. My heart was pounding hard, loud in my ears, but the rest of me stayed still. No awkward hands, no pulling away. Just the two of us, sitting under a string of warm rooftop lights, kissing like we'd done it before in some other life. When he pulled back, he didn't speak. Neither did I. Luca just looked at me for a second, really looked, like he was trying to read a book in a language he didn't understand but was desperate to translate. Then he smiled, barely, and said, "Okay?" I laughed, not because it was funny, but because I was nervous and full of adrenaline and I had no idea what else to do. "Yeah," I said, "okay." He leaned his forehead against mine for a second, and we just sat there like that, breathing the same slow, late-night air. Eventually, he stood and held out his hand. "Sleep?" I blinked. "Yeah, sleep." We walked downstairs together, neither of us saying much, but when we reached the hallway to our bunks, he turned to me and paused. Then he pointed to his room, well, his shared dorm, and said, "Many snore. You come?" My mouth went dry. I should have said no. I mean, what was I walking into? A room full of strangers? Was this even allowed? But instead, I nodded. He led me down the hallway to his bunk room. 6 beds, all full except his. The room was dark, faint snoring coming from one of the top bunks. He slipped off his shirt, tossed it in the corner, then crawled into the lower bunk and lifted the blanket in silent invitation. I stood there like an idiot for half a beat, then climbed in beside him. It was cramped, barely enough space for one person, let alone 2 full-grown guys, but somehow it worked. His arm settled across my waist, his chin tucked lightly against my shoulder. I could feel every inch of him pressed against me, and yet I didn't feel trapped. I felt calm, warm, anchored. He didn't try anything, didn't touch me in any way that felt like pressure or expectation. Just held me, just was there. I didn't sleep much, not because I was uncomfortable, but because I didn't want to miss a second of it. In the morning, I woke up to the sound of rustling backpacks and someone's phone alarm playing Despacito at half volume. Luca was still asleep, mouth slightly open, hair a mess. He looked younger like this, softer. I didn't want to wake him, but I had a walking tour at 9, so I eased myself out as gently as I could. Before I left, I scribbled a note on the back of a flyer I found on the nightstand. "Beach again? 3 p.m. C." I left it by his phone and slipped out. The tour was fine. I barely listened. All I could think about was 3 p.m. I showed up to the beach early, just in case, found a shaded spot and tried not to check the time every 5 seconds. And then I saw him, coming down the hill in a white tank top and swim trunks, sunglasses in hand, grin already forming when he spotted me. He dropped his stuff next to mine and plopped down beside me, brushing sand off his knees. "You write?" he said, holding up the crumpled note. "Nice." I laughed. "Thanks." He leaned in and kissed me on the cheek. Not shy, not dramatic, just easy. "Today," he said, patting the sand, "is good." We spent the whole afternoon at the beach, talking in half English, half gesture, playing in the water like idiots, lying side by side in the sand, pointing at clouds and trying to name them. At one point I asked, "What do you do in France?" He thought for a second, then said, "Bar, in Lyon." "I bartender." That made sense. He had that calm, warm presence, the kind that made you want to talk. want to linger. You like it? He shrugged. Busy, but okay. He turned toward me then, eyes squinting against the sun. You? He asked. Life? I gave a bitter laugh. Messy. He frowned, then reached over and touched my wrist lightly. Messy good or messy bad? I stared at him. Then I said the most honest thing I had in weeks. Both, he smiled. Same. When we got back to the hostel that night, we didn't go upstairs right away. We sat in the courtyard, eating shared leftovers and drinking tiny plastic cups of cheap wine someone left in the fridge. There were long silences, but not the awkward kind. The kind where being quiet with someone says more than talking. Eventually, Luca looked at me and said, You stay long? I shook my head. 2 more nights. He didn't say anything. Just nodded, eyes cast down at his cup. You? I asked. Leave Monday, go home, then back lying. I don't know what I expected, but hearing it made something tighten in my chest. I looked at him for a long second. He met my gaze, and in that moment, it hit me. We didn't know each other. Not really. But something was happening anyway. And it wasn't over yet. Sunday was my last full day in Lagos. I tried not to think about that as Luca and I walked down to the beach again that morning, but it clung to everything. The way his fingers brushed against mine as we walked, the way he glanced at me sideways like he was trying to memorize my face. He didn't talk much that day. Neither did I. We swam again, floated lazily out where the water got darker, just drifting under a wide-open sky. At one point, I was floating on my back, eyes closed, and I felt his hand find mine under the surface. Just a light touch. No pressure. We didn't even look at each other. I think that's what made it hit harder. Back on the sand, we dried off in the sun. I had my journal open, but wasn't writing anything. He lay beside me, face turned toward me, hair curling slightly at the temples from salt water. You write, he said suddenly, pointing to the journal. Yeah, I replied, kind of a habit. He nodded. For work? Sometimes. I do freelance stuff, articles, blogs. He pointed to the book again. Now? I shook my head. Now? Just thinking. He smiled like he understood anyway. That afternoon, we grabbed lunch from a little place near the cliffside. Sandwiches and soda. Sat on a rock wall overlooking the water, legs dangling, people watching. A couple walked past us, 2 guys, hand in hand. One of them leaned over to kiss the other's cheek before disappearing down the path. Luca watched them go, then turned to me. That okay in New York? He asked. I blinked. Yeah, mostly. Depends where you are, but yeah. He nodded. In Italy, not always easy. My town, small. His eyes were distant for a moment, then he looked back at me, serious now. I never kissed boy in street. I didn't know what to say to that, but I felt it. The weight of it. How casual this trip must have felt compared to home. How maybe I was something easy to want, because I'd be gone soon. You have boyfriend? He asked, suddenly. Not anymore, I said. He looked like he wanted to ask why. Maybe how. But instead he said, me. Never. Not real. We sat in silence after that, finishing our lunch. The breeze was cooler now, the sea a little rougher. Tomorrow, I said. I leave. He nodded, eyes still on the horizon. You go early? Bus at noon. He turned to me then, really looked at me. Can I sleep with you? I blinked. You mean? He held up a hand quickly. No closeness. I mean, stay. Sleep. I smiled. Yes, please. That night, we didn't join the others on the rooftop. We didn't say goodbye or tell anyone. We just went to my bunk and curled up together, fully clothed, under the rough hostel blanket. It was weirdly intimate. He lay behind me, arms wrapped around my waist, breath warm on the back of my neck. "Chris," he whispered. "Yeah?" "You, good boy," I laughed. "You mean a good guy?" He laughed too, then corrected himself. "Yes, guy." A pause. Then, "You are soft. In heart." I turned in his arms to face him. His eyes were dark in the dim light, but steady. He reached up, touched my cheek gently with the back of his hand. Then he kissed me again. Slow. Careful. Like we still had time. I fell asleep like that, his forehead resting against mine, our legs tangled, the hum of late summer air thick around us. In the morning, we didn't speak much. Just packed my things quietly while the rest of the dorm still slept. When we reached the station, the bus was already there, people milling around, loading luggage. The kind of goodbye that doesn't wait for drama. I turned to Luca. "I'll message you," I said. "Instagram?" He nodded, pulling out his phone. We exchanged handles, and he typed something into the search bar. When he looked up again, his expression had shifted. Sad, but not desperate. "Chris? Yeah?" He kissed me one more time. Not on the lips, but on the cheek, slow and firm. His hand touched my chest briefly. Then he said, "You stay in here." He pointed to my heart. I swallowed. "So do you." Then I got on the bus. He stayed on the sidewalk until we pulled away. Back in New York, everything felt louder. Car horns, subway brakes, conversations. Even my apartment, barely 500 square feet of hardwood and dust, felt echoey. The silence wasn't peaceful anymore. It was hollow. I kept waiting to feel normal again. Waiting for that weird, post-travel haze to wear off. But it didn't. I'd lie on my bed, scrolling through Instagram, rewatching stories I'd taken of the beach, of the cliffs, of Luca. He'd pop into frame sometimes, blurry in the background, half smiling, waving at the camera like he was already fading. He didn't post much himself, but he messaged. The first time was a photo. 2 cups of espresso on a windowsill with a caption that just said, "Hot beverage. Miss you." I stared at it for way too long before responding. "God, I miss European coffee," he replied instantly. "Come back?" I laughed. Typed, "I wish," and put my phone face down. We messaged almost every day after that. Sometimes a sentence, sometimes a photo, sometimes voice notes where he'd say something in slow, careful English, and I'd reply in butchered Italian, reading off Google Translate. We joked about it, called it our language date. 15 minutes a day of trying to understand each other. I started learning more Italian, not seriously, but enough to get by. And the more I understood, the more I realized how funny he was. He had this dry, deadpan way of phrasing things that made me laugh out loud on the train more than once. One night, he sent me a message that just said, "I dream you." Your ear was in my mouth. I choked on my wine. I wrote back, "Do you mean you dreamed about kissing me?" And he replied instantly, "Yes, but also maybe your ear." It became a thing, these weird mistranslations that somehow made everything better, more real. Sometimes, I wondered what would have happened if we'd had a full language in common. Would it have been easier? Maybe, but part of me liked that we had to try, that every word felt chosen. A few weeks later, I got a surprise package at my door. Inside was a small tin of Italian candies, a handwritten postcard with just, "I find this in France. You like?" And a folded up photo of the 2 of us at the beach. One I hadn't even known was taken. I stared at it for a long time. His arm draped over my shoulder. Our heads tilted toward each other, smiling like we were in on a secret. I put it on my fridge. By October, we were calling more. Not long calls. 15, 20 minutes at most. Mostly at night. I'd be lying in bed, headphones in, and hear his voice in that slow, thoughtful rhythm. Today, rain, bad people at work, but I think of you. Sometimes we'd talk about real things. His job, my freelance struggles, his visa stress. Sometimes it was just nonsense. I'd read him memes out loud and try to explain them. He'd teach me Italian insults I'd never use in public. One night I asked, "Have you ever dated someone not from your country?" He paused. "No, never. You?" I shook my head even though he couldn't see me. "No. I mean, not seriously." There was a silence on the line. Then he said, "What is seriously?" And I didn't know how to answer that. It was November when he said it. I had just finished a client call and was walking through Union Square, phone to my ear, coat zipped up to my chin. He was sitting in his apartment in Lyon. I could hear music in the background, something low and jazzy. "I think," he said, slow and careful, "you are my important person." I stopped walking. "Your what?" "I don't know a word. But every day, I think you. I want you." My heart caught. I want us. I pressed the phone tighter to my ear, the city swirling around me in a blur of motion and sound. "Luca," I said softly, "I think you're my important person too." He laughed. A quiet, relieved sound. Then, "So what we do?" I didn't know the answer. Not yet. But in that moment, the question felt like a promise. A week after Luca told me I was his important person, I bought a ticket, one way. New York to Lyon. 3 weeks out. I didn't tell him at first. I wanted it to be real before I let the fantasy in. I wanted to sit with it. Just me and the idea of him in the same place, same bed, same language mess between us. And once it felt real, I called him. We were already talking when I pulled up the confirmation email on my laptop. "I did something," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. He raised an eyebrow on the screen. "What you do?" I spun the laptop around and showed him the flight booking. He stared, then blinked, then grinned so wide I thought his face might break. "You come?" "I'm coming," I said. "December 10th. His hands covered his face, but I could hear the sound he made behind them. A mix of a laugh and something like disbelief. "You are crazy," he said. "But I love it." Then softer, "I miss you too much." We spent the next hour talking logistics, where I'd stay, with him obviously, how long I could be there. I said 2 months, hoping I could stretch it longer. What we'd do: eat everything, see everything, kiss everywhere. It felt surreal. But good. God, it felt good. The weeks leading up to the trip were chaos. I had to wrap up freelance contracts, sublet my apartment, find someone to feed my needy houseplant. My mom called 3 times asking if I was sure this wasn't some eat, pray, love midlife crisis. "It's not midlife," I said. "You're 29. You think I waited this long to start guilt tripping?" Fair. Still, I could tell she was curious. She'd ask little things. "What's he like?" Or "Do you think it's serious?" in that way, where she pretended not to be dying to know more. I didn't give her much. Not because I was hiding him, but because I didn't know how to explain him yet. Us. What we were building. It didn't fit neatly into a box. And part of me liked that. The flight to Lyon was overnight. 9 hours of nerves, headphones, and scrolling through every photo I had of him, zooming in like I hadn't already memorized his face. When I landed, it was early. Gray sky. Cold air. My stomach was doing backflips as I stepped off the train and walked out of the station. And there he was, Luca. In a beanie and oversized coat, hands stuffed in his pockets, looking around nervously. The second he saw me, everything in his face changed. He lit up, like someone turned on all the lights inside him. He ran the last few steps, then wrapped me in the tightest hug I'd ever had. We didn't kiss. Not right away. We just stood there on the sidewalk, breathing each other in. And then he pulled back, held my face in his hands, and said, "You are real." I laughed, breathless. "So are you." Then he kissed me. right there, in the middle of a cold French morning, with people walking past and the whole world spinning around us. It wasn't dramatic or perfect or choreographed. It was just real. Luca's apartment was small, one bedroom, a galley kitchen, and a tiny balcony that looked out over the street. The kind of place that made you lower your voice naturally, like the walls had ears. It smelled like laundry detergent, and whatever soap he used that clung to his shirts. I dropped my backpack by the door and just stood there for a second, letting it all sink in. "Home," he said, stepping behind me, wrapping his arms around my waist. "Is okay?" I turned in his arms. "It's perfect." We didn't do much that first day. I was jet-lagged. He had work. But he left me keys, showed me where the coffee was, and left a note on the fridge that said, "If you sleep too long, I come kiss you awake." That night, we made pasta together, if you can call what I did helping. He did most of the cooking while I stood nearby and asked dumb questions. He was in his zone, tasting sauce from a wooden spoon, humming to himself. "You're really good at this," I said. He glanced over, smirking. "I know, I am Italian." We ate on the couch, knees touching, his playlist humming in the background. After dinner, he kissed me slow and deep like he was still hungry and led me to bed without saying a word. That night, everything felt more certain. Not rushed. Not explosive. Just two people learning each other's bodies one gentle touch at a time. There was laughter. Some awkwardness. Whispered words in half languages. But nothing about it felt uncertain. It felt like us. The next few weeks moved in rhythms. Mornings were coffee and kisses, slow starts wrapped in warm blankets. He'd go to work in the afternoons, and I'd write, explore, wander around Lyon with my camera. Evenings were ours. Some nights we went out. Tiny cafes, wine bars, street food stalls. Other nights we stayed in, cooked, listened to music, danced barefoot in the kitchen. He made fun of my French. I mocked his old flip-flops. It felt like a life, not a vacation, not a fling. A real, messy, sleepy-eyed life. But it wasn't always smooth. There were misunderstandings, missed meanings. That one night I came home late and forgot to message, and he looked so worried I almost cried. Or when I misunderstood a joke he made and thought he was mocking me. We had to work harder to explain things. Emotions, intentions, everything. But maybe that was the point. Every feeling had to be spelled out, traced in gestures, softened with patience. It made everything more honest. One night, we were lying in bed, limbs tangled, my head on his chest. He was tracing patterns on my back. "I don't say words good," he said suddenly, "but I feel strong." I tilted my head to look up at him. "You don't have to say it right. I get it." He nodded, still focused on my skin. Then he whispered, "I think I love you." Not in a grand, dramatic way, more like he was handing me a secret. I didn't need to think. "I think I love you too," I said, and that was it. No fireworks, no dramatic music. Just two people in a bed, whispering feelings in two different languages, and somehow understanding them perfectly. By late January, the streets of Lyon were dusted with snow. I'd never seen this side of the city before, soft and quiet, buildings wearing white like a secret. Luca and I would walk through the market hand in hand, breath fogging in the cold air, laughing like we belonged there. And maybe we did. That's what was messing with me. The line between vacation and real life had blurred. We weren't just playing house anymore. We were living in it. He'd leave little notes on the mirror in the morning. "Wear a scarf today. Cold. Kiss you later." Sometimes I'd leave lunch on his workbench. Simple things like sandwiches or leftover soup. And he'd text me photos of himself eating it with a thumbs up emoji and, always, "Grazie amore." I was falling in love with a life I couldn't take home with me. I still had my job, my apartment, my real life back in New York. But every time I opened a browser tab to look at flights home, my stomach would drop. "Do you go soon?" he asked one night, his voice quiet as we sat side by side on the bed. each of us pretending to scroll our phones. I nodded. In a week. He didn't say anything, just put his phone down, leaned back on the pillows, and stared at the ceiling. I don't want, he finally said. I don't either. He looked at me then. Eyes soft, mouth tight. What we do? That was the thing. Neither of us had answers. Just feelings. And feelings weren't enough to cross oceans. Or were they? A few days later, we were making dinner when he said, out of nowhere, I look, Job. Maybe in America? I dropped the spoon I was holding. You would? He nodded. Is hard. But I try. I crossed the kitchen, pulled him into a hug, held him like I hadn't in weeks. Luca, if you lived in New York, I'd never let you out of my bed. He laughed. And maybe your bed is warm. We kissed like we were already there. The night before I left, we didn't sleep. We stayed up watching movies in bed, kissing between lines of subtitles, holding each other like something permanent. I pressed my face into his neck and tried to memorize everything, his scent, his skin, the exact way he said my name. You come back, he said, eyes on mine. I will, I said. And I meant it. Luca walked me to the airport. He insisted, even though I offered to call a taxi, even though it meant waking up at 5 a.m. He stood in line with me, helped me check my bag, held my hand while I waded through security. We didn't say much. What do you say when your chest is already in your throat? We stood by the rope, just before the security gate, both of us pretending we still had time. He pulled me into a long hug. One of those wordless, full-body things that say everything all at once. His hand was in my hair, mine on his lower back. Neither of us wanted to pull away. I will miss you too much, he whispered, voice low and shaky. You'll see me soon, I said, but it didn't sound as certain as I wanted it to. I try. I come. Or you come. We finally pulled apart, just a few inches. Then he kissed me. It wasn't rushed, wasn't dramatic, just real, like everything else between us. I love you, he said. I swallowed. I love you too. And then I went through security, looking back once, twice, watching him fade into the crowd, hands in his coat pockets, face tilted up like he was trying to hold it together. Back in New York, I felt disoriented. The noise, the pace, the winter cold that bit in a different way. My apartment felt empty, like he'd been there once and left a Luca-shaped silence behind. But we kept talking. Every day, calls, voice notes, long messages where we tried to explain feelings that barely translated into our own languages, let alone across them. He kept saying, I learned more English, for you. And I kept saying, I'll come back, for you. We made plans, loose ones, maybe spring, maybe summer, maybe something more permanent. I don't know how it ends yet. I just know that some people crash into your life without warning. Different languages, different homes, different rhythms, and still fit in a way you never expected. Luca and I didn't speak the same language when we met, but we kissed anyway. And somehow, that said everything we needed.